Can I first say welcome to the club and thank you very much for coming. We're very honoured to have you here indeed. Now then, the first question, I think we'll better set off. I think I'll address you, Bill. How long have you been in rollers? Altogether?
Since 1943. I've been in pigeons all my life, but it was in 1943 that I met Lord Penson and he introduced me to the true roller pigeon.
Did you start off with one type of bird, or did you get it from 2 or 3 different people?
Well, in those particular days in 43, pigeons in general was in short supply because the war was still on. And there was no food to feed rollers, and you couldn't get feed to feed roller pigeons legitimately. Your honesty was put to question, and it was a matter of buying points on the black market, and in turn you spent your points plus your money to buy this likes of pearl barley, peanut oatmeal, malafat peas and the like, you know, in order to feed your pigeons. It was a matter of if you couldn't afford the black market points, then you couldn't afford you couldn't get the corn anyway, the feed anyway. But there were a lot of people about that was getting, that got a few pigeons and they were scrounging a bit of food. You could also toast brown bread and crumble bread up and feed your pigeons. In the autumn we would collect acorns and chop them up and feed the pigeons on chopped acorns. And one particular fancier in the back country even chopped raw potatoes up into small squares, roasted them and fed them to the pigeons. Yeah. There were a few people that around got the pigeons, but there was very, very few people who was employing a collective kit of genuine Birmingham rollers as you see them today.
Yeah. Who would you say would be the most single influence in rollers in your day?
Well, I would say Lord Penson.
Lord Penson himself?
Yeah, yeah. I was fortunate enough to know the gentleman. I spent a lot of time with him. Yeah. I mean, I even went out in 1966 and I spent 30 days in California with them. Mm. Very knowledgeable man.
Yeah,
did he ever get any of his birds?
I had birds off Bill Penson before he left for America. He went to America first in 1949. I went out there in 1966 and I brought 14 pigeons back from California in 1966.
Did you ever meet Bill, though? Did you ever meet him?
I've met him on 3 occasions. Living in Borstal, obviously, Bill was probably nearer to him than I was, but I didn't know of him only through the different fanciers I knew. And I met Bill on 3 occasions when I used to be the show secretary of the Birmingham Culling Society, an old society which disbanded probably 10, 12 years ago, probably longer than that, where they used to cater for every breed of pigeon, and there was show people. It was a showing society, the Culling area. There was all different varieties of pigeons there. But Bill attended 2 of these meetings we had, and the last time I met Bill was when he came over to my house. I think the week I had my pigeons stolen.
No.
And he brought a video with him about the pigeons in America and the fantastic motorways over there, which, you know, are absolutely fantastic. But Bill was a great fella. Very entertaining, not lost for words, lovely with the ladies, and he was a great fella.
Lovely with the ladies.
He did present me with a roller book that he wrote, and in the book it's presented to Bob Brown, certainly from Bill Penson, and I cherished that book. And anyway, I looked for it the other day and it seems to be missing. I don't know which one that is.
Did you see his pigeons fly?
I never saw his pigeons fly, no.
At the time you met him, Bob, he was already in America, I believe.
That is
he was
correct.
on holiday. But Bob mentioned the Culling Society. That was in existence in the 1940s. It catered for all breeds of pigeon, and you had to be nominated. You just couldn't go and join the Culling Society, but you had to get a friend to nominate you, and then you were put before the committee and had to meet the committee before you'd actually made a member. However, they had some very wonderful shows where they call them table shows. You go along on a Saturday take your pigeons, and you would pen the pigeons there and then. And then they would choose the judges from the people in the room, which meant to say you would be called upon to judge a type of pigeon that you was totally not conversant with. However, this was good education in as much as you had the opportunity of judging other people's pigeons, a different type of pigeon, a different variety. Then, after you judged the pigeons, you could go back to the people that owned them, and they would then tell you the good points, the bad points, how you're doing. There was never any animosity, it was just one big happy family type of affair, wasn't it? So it was a very, very good society, if you remember.
Yes.
When did you first start in rollers?
When did I start in rollers? Well, I go back to the time when I was a boy. My father was a racing man, and we had lots of races. And we finally kept a pub. I got more money than probably 90% of the kids in the area that I lived in. And one of our maids that used to be in the pub had got a brother that had got these fancy coloured pigeons. And I used to go and spend days with her and him up his garden. And I think that was how I got involved with the rollers and stumblers, as we called them in them days. My father was very disappointed when I took to rollers, and I was, he said, you can have some races in a penny your own. I said, I don't want them. I went and bought a pair, they had the cage, 2 pigeons, 4 the place that cost me at the pet shop. And I went and got a box from down the market, orange box, and put some mats on it, and I hung it on the wall, and the cat had the 2 pigeons the same night. Well, I thought my eyes up, and in the end, my dad gave away, and he said, well, I'll go and see Fred Cooper and see if you can have a few of his pigeons. And I started when I was about 8 or 9 with these fancy coloured looking pigeons. But as I began to fly them and get a kid going, I was only interested in the roll. And I used to go all around Borstal and district looking for pigeons that could roll. Well, if they only did this much or tumbled, you know, they were better than them that fled round. And
You know what got them digging pigeons?
that was how I got involved in rollers, and having a little bit more money in my pocket as regards the other kids. You know, I could always go and say, well, I'll give you 6 pence for that one that's there, and it said, well, it's a bit more than that, so I'll give you 7 pence, that's a lot. And I could buy pigeons from different kinds of pigeons, and this is how I developed the love for rollers.
How did you would come on to some of the deep birds that you've got? I mean, I've obviously seen the birds, yeah.
How did I come on to them?
How did you breed to get the birds that depth of roll?
Well, of course, if you're sufficiently interested enough, you want utopia, don't you? You want them deep, you want them fast, and you want them well controlled. But that has come later on in life. I mean, if you had one roll down and kill itself, you know, you'll think, oh dear, my best pigeon's gone, but it isn't so. It's the clever pigeon that pulls out of the roll and stops and lands on the loft.
Now, to say, I'm breaking you off, I'm sorry about that. Say you were a novice fancier. Say that your lot got burnt down and you're going to start again. How would you create a strain of birds? You know, how would you go about creating a strain of birds to your satisfaction? What would you do to do this? Would you choose a certain cock and make it to half those hens, or would you go through an hen line or something like that?
Well, I'm a big believer in dominant cocks. You can breed probably hundreds of good hens, but outstanding cocks, I think, are the secret to success in mowers. I may be wrong, but I don't think I am. And when I think of the pigeons I have and the cocks that I have, they are great pigeons. You can breed a lot of good hens, but you can't breed so many good cocks. But if I'm going to start again, my age, I should obviously go to people like Barrett, who was a stonemason and say I've had my pigeons block burnt down and I'd start again. But then you start with a family of pigeons. You don't have one from here, there and everywhere because you'll get nowhere. The thing is, you've got to start building a family of pigeons and make close enough so that you can bear cousins together, half brother and half sister, and as long as they're related to one another, you'll get there in the end. That's how I feel about rollers.
How long do you think it takes you to get there? And if you know what you're doing, you get it perfectly, how long do you think it takes you?
Well, August, I've got a new fancier that's bought some pigeons off me this year. And I said to him, you've got the pigeons. I've given you a pedigree of every pigeon you've bought from me. I said, now, you've got a family of pigeons to start with, but I still say it will take you at least 4 to 5 years to perfect the pigeons and to and be able to put a team of pigeons that's likely to win a competition. I can't see you doing it under 4 to 5 years.
What's the closest relationship with pairs ever got for breeding?
Well, I like to breed first and second cousins, aunts and uncles. I don't like breeding father to daughter and mother to son, or brother and sister, but other fanciers do this, but I know I tried it in the early days and I had more crashes than I could contend with, you know, and I think cousins, second cousins, first cousins, aunts and uncles, and if you've got a good stock book, and you can go back in the breeding, what it's bred from, you build a family of pigeons around you, and what I do about every 5 years, I always introduce a good hen. And it's got to be a good hen, which I would like to breed around my loft. I introduced one off John Thompson this year. An outstanding pigeon in his kits. I'd seen it fly for a couple of years, and I said to John, could I borrow that pigeon off you, that self-delivered? He said, with pleasure. He said, you can't buy it, you can borrow it. And I bred 7 youngsters from that matey with the best cock I've got. And I put the 7 pigeons into stock this time to breed round my loft. And the amazing part about the 7 pigeons that I've bred, they were all good ones. And that was a complete outcross as far as I knew. But as I say, I'm looking forward to having a good season with this mating, pairing these youngsters back to the hens and cocks and cousins of the old grizzle cock which I have.
On that question about how close should somebody mate, I think I read somewhere, I could be wrong, that Jim Skidmore said he liked to put cousins together, uncle to niece. But how, is there any kind of pattern you, Bill, you, George, like when you're mating your pigeons up? Or is there something that's too close?
Personally, I don't think you'd get too close. Because you're always going to breed pigeons that are undesirable. To be honest, what you make up, you're still going to breed pigeons that are not going to fly within the kit. You're going to breed pigeons that are bloody lazy. You're breeding the potential of throw out, and that's how you make up. What do you reckon? I think, I personally do make very, very close.
Yeah.
But one thing about mating your birds very, very close, the pulse comes to the fore, possibly in the first 6 months of their life. So therefore you don't waste any time holding on to those pigeons. You can eliminate them in the first 6 months of their life. If you get a pigeon of a very, very close mating, such as brother and sister, over up to 12 months of age, you usually find you got a good. They're in the minority, but you do get a good. But one thing I'd like to say about close breed, especially hens, I've had a lot of experience of mating brother and sister together. And I find that in the main, these birds have a very short lifespan, 2 to 3 years usually. And they don't roll down, they don't kill the bloody self, you eventually find them dead in the loft. And then 2 to 3 years, usually during the breeding season.
That's just happened to me. One of your birds.
Pardon?
That cock there, that's just exactly what happened.
The guy that got bird, you let it.
Yeah.
What about you, George? How do you feel about what's being said on?
Half brother, half sister, I like to do.
Yeah.
That's what I work on, half brother, half sister.
What percentage of wastage do you think you have then, George, in your breeding yourself?
Well,
If you bred 100 pigeons in a year,
It depends
What
from
would you
year to
expect
year.
this?
I found that in 1987, my 1987 yearlings were the best yearlings I've ever had. And I kept 20 of those, and I gave George Kitson 19, and the Flew Welder 19 did as well. So there's 39 that were decent pigeons, and that was out of 50. But last year's, the yearlings I'm flying now, the 1988 pigeons, they're not as good as the 1987.
what would you say, Bob? What's your percentage? Your birds?
Well, I kill a lot of pigeons. If a pigeon goes and lands on a house top, I'll give it 2 chances not to kill it. That's, I'm strict with that because I live in a residential area, and I don't want people complaining about pigeons landing on houses. And I think one thing, if you allow pigeons to drop on a house, it ain't long before he takes his mate with him, and it ain't long before everybody kisses him. So therefore, you've got to be very severe in culling them. And as I live in an area where I'm in the middle of houses.
I am as well, excuse me. I am a normal, and John's always advocated that. But even if it's well bred, I'm a novice. If it's well bred, would you give it more than 2 chances?
I only give it 2. I mean, if it lands on the house twice,
That's what John says.
once for a mistake,
Every
twice
time.
to be
No
killed.
more than 2.
No more than 2.
If you can't afford to do that,
I live just, I was surrounded.
yeah, well, you can't afford to. You can't afford to kill it if you're an novice. You manage to start.
Well, I've been breeding 4 years.
Well, 4 years. I mean, if it's a good pigeon, if it's got the velocity and it's got decent depth with it, then you should keep the pigeon and put it into the breeding.
They were only
It's
here.
no flying it.
The 2 I had in question were yearlings bred out of John Huntington's stock.
And when you're older, Mark.
They weren't flying properly. They were dropping on the roofs, but they were late breds as well.
But they're like lazy.
It was
They're lazy.
Yes, that's right. Again, they were mature. I rang John to ask him if he wanted them, and he says, "No, they're ruined." So
It's always harder to aim for.
I can't go home. The other one, it was a beautiful little Dorish, and I killed it. He said, "That's all you can do."
Personally, if they're lazy, I'd give them a couple of chances, but if they continually drop on not flying on me, if you get a pigeon that's flown half an hour and he comes down, prefers to land on the house top rather than the shed top, that to me ain't too bad a problem.
You can get them in
overuse it. But I'm talking about a pigeon that go to the house before it flies and not
Yeah,
settle
they
down.
were doing.
That's idolizers, and you don't want no pigeons that are idle whatsoever.
John says, "Kill them."
What happened with those pigeons? They were late breds, as you said yourself. Well, I'll tell you what happened with them. You didn't have time to train them.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's
That's
why.
why I would have looked to kill them because they were so well bred. And I rang John up and said, "You want me?" He says, "Well, no, not really." He says,
Well, without your out of work, without your either unfortunate enough to be out of work on the job or
yeah, they're not worth breeding like
you haven't got time to fly them, see, because once the clocks go back and it's all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, in fact, I've wrote it down in my book many a time, don't breed late breds, they're a waste of time. Because without you've got a good family of pigeons and you want to breed some late breds that you're going to put into stock without flying.
You know, George, you talk about dual main pairings and half-brothers and sister. How close will you go in future generation half-brothers and sister? Because you're obviously going closer each time.
That's right.
You're still talking about inbred half-brothers and
That's
sisters.
right.
How close will you go?
Well, eventually, if the birds get too small, you've got to tell when they.
If it shows at the birds, like,
It'll show up, won't it? I mean, you start getting all the
Shallow keels and
That's right. And then I'll put something in, but I can see this. I've got enough pigeons now, and I can keep breeding for another 5 or 6 years, I would think, without putting crossing. But then again,
You
if
can
all of a
like
sudden the pigeons start coming too small,
what you're saying is you can like all cross within the family.
that's right. Yeah.
Go from the phone, like they give them a boost.
Well, John was asking earlier on about if you had all your pigeons, if your shed burned down or whatever, and you had to start again, or if a novice was starting.
Yeah.
Well, I think the best way you can start is to go around the flies, and provided you can afford it. Well, if you can't, just buy 1 pair, but if you can, buy 3 pair of pigeons. It don't matter where these 3 pair of pigeons come from. You can buy 6 pigeons, 3 cocks and 3 hens from any loft, 6 different lofts if you like, provided the ones that you buy are all good ones, you've seen them roll, and provided they're all over 2-year-old, and breed around those 6 pigeons, and that's the shortest way to get a good pigeons. Because it don't matter, if you only go to one man, I think Bob said just go to one place, you pigeon out more from one place. You still won't fly a good kit. It'll take you 5 or 6 years, not because the pigeons aren't performing, but it'll take you that to breed a pigeon yourself to fly in the environment that you live in. See, pigeons that will fly at Bob's, where he lives, perhaps won't fly where you live in Sheffield. You'd have to develop your own family of pigeons out of those pigeons to fly where you live. So it takes a long while. But the best way is to go around the flies and pick the pigeons out.
I think many a time when you go around and see novice flyers, and you see the teams in there, I think the difference in depth of pigeons that the novice has to fly in a team gives the show away. He's not got the uniformity which he needs to get a good team going anyway. You go into some teams and you see birds coming at, say, 10 feet or 12 feet, 15 feet, and then you see some deep ones coming. Well, this can spoil a team itself, it can pull a team out, you know. So therefore you've got to create a strain within a strain, keep working on and getting, you know, same depth together to get the type of bird you need, which George is just saying, you need to breed to your own area. Sorry, go on, John. There's just a question at the back here.
Just one thing I'd like to ask. How can a novice tell the difference between a good bird and a bad bird in its breeding if perhaps they haven't had the experience in flying them and managing them?
Exactly.
What advice would you give to a novice when they've got a problem, a flying problem, and they're not sure whether it's the way they've handled it or the way it's been bred?
Or the way it rolls, whether it rolls tight, loose, or ragged, or twisted. Well, I always say this, it's like this chap that's come to me from Tamworth. I said, well, you obviously don't know the first thing about rollers. He was a racing man. And I said, the only thing you can do, I can let you have some pigeons, you can see them perform, and you can pick them out of the sky. I said, but I would like to take it to see Bill Barrett's pigeons. I would like to say you can show George Mason's pigeons. And then you'll know what the competition flying is all about. You'll see some great rollers. And if you go and visit people like in my area, which is Ron Adam and different other fanciers, then you've got an idea of what you're looking for, and that's the aim a new fancy will have to contend with, really.
I think Bill Barrett came out with a classic statement to me, and I'm asking Bill to say this again. He told me this in his back garden, Bill, and you mentioned the only way you can learn about rules is underneath it.
Well, that's true. Being a club secretary, obviously I get a lot of inquiries from people that are on amateurs, some people that had rollers before, they're just coming back into the game. What I advise these people to do, I mean, I don't sell any pigeons, but I do give a lot of pigeons away and a lot of pigeons out to breeding. But what I do, I try to educate these people. If anybody writes or phones me up and asks about rollers, the first thing I do is invite them to come and have a look at my kit. You know? Now, the best classroom in the world for running rollers is in the garden with a kit of pigeons in the air, with the person who's controlling that kit telling you all the good points and the bad points. And what I like people to come and see my kit for pigeons fly, then what you can do, you can watch these people. And some people, they're only interested in pigeons and as much as they've heard about Birmingham rollers, so they want to see a kit of Birmingham rollers fly. And they're only interested in pigeons themselves. And you can soon tell these people, because they do a lot of talking, but they don't do any watching. And you can tell the people that are really interested in flying Birmingham rollers, whether they kept rolling before or not. They're fascinated by what's in the air. And if you get a young person, no matter how old he might be, come into your yard and you fly your kit and he can't take his eyes off him, you can say to yourself, he's going to make a roller. But the person that wants to talk and not look at what's going on up in the air, you can forget.
I think you do always get this on a flyer, though, don't you?
Yes, you do.
I mean, you can watch pigeons for a certain amount of time, but if you're watching 9 and 10 hours a day like we do on the fly, you're bound to get naked.
Well, that's right, you're going to get bored to a certain extent. But in the main, I like to see these youngsters do what they intend to do, and that's watch pigeons and learn about the capabilities of them. and learn that, you know, and see how exciting a really good kit can be.
If you went to a novice's loft to see their birds flying, how critical would you be? I mean, would you be frighteningly honest?
You've got to be
I don't
critical.
know critical is the right word. If he wanted advice, you'd give him, you know, and you'd explain to him what's going right or what's going wrong with his kit in the air. I mean, the only way you can help him is by him putting the kit in the air and watching his management methods. Because no matter how good a pigeon you might have, if your management methods aren't correct, then you're never going to fly a good kit of flowers.
Do you think, I've had pigeons all my life, off and on.
Yeah.
And I'm not an experienced pigeon man, obviously. As a young thing, I can just blow all my pigeons.
Yeah.
But rollers are the hardest birds to control.
I agree.
They're a very frustrating hobby. When they're done repeatedly,
As a novice,
they can
I can fly, my rollers aren't good rollers, no way. But they're as well behaved as a kid for coming in and out as anybody's. But, unfortunately, I've got John Huntington. And he'll ring me up and tell me what's wrong, and I'll go see John. But how can a youngster that buys good stock possibly turn a kit of birds without tuition? Because I'd have given him 2 years ago without John Huntington.
He can't, can he?
What?
He can't, can he? He can't.
But how?
Tell you what, the only thing you can give something like that without they live close by, if you want to see an experienced fancier, if they're out on a limb somewhere, the only thing you can advise them to do is buy Bill Penson's book, because that tells you just about everything. And I'm no particular, I think he was a good man, like, only from what Bill said. I mean, I didn't know him personally, but I can assure you his book.
I've read his book.
When I first read his book, some years ago, 20 years or more ago, when I first read his book, I used to say to Bill Barrett, that man contradicts himself, this is one thing, you know. But as the years have gone on, and I still read his book now, I understand a lot of the things he said. A lot of the things Bill Penson said, if a novice read his book, it's the only thing in
Well, you just simply don't understand it as a novice, does it? I think the longer you're in rollers, the more you realise the little you know.
Yeah, but that's the best thing a novice could do, would be, if he can't go to an experienced fancier field and everything, then he's got to get that book, that's the only thing he's got, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I must agree with that.
well, they call it the Bible.
It's really hard work, isn't it, rollers?
They call it the Bible.
It's all powers of observation, see. I mean, you find a lot of people, even people that are flying in the competition. There's some people that fly in competitions, and what they do during the weeks prior to the competition, they turn the kit out, and then now they're going to write a letter for a magazine, or they start cleaning the pigeons out. They don't watch them. If you can't watch them for the 20 minutes at least, then it's pointless having them out. If you can't watch them for 20 minutes, don't fly them that day. Because a lot of them that are flying in competition, they've got good birds, and they can get better performance out of the kit if they watch the kit more and took the bad pigeons down. I mean, yesterday I flew a kit of yearlings, and I've been watching a red ball for a few weeks, and yesterday I made my mind up. The pigeon was now down, we kept whipping straight across the front of the kit. It was dragging on tail, and it could roll good. Pulled its head off. It's no good to me. It's no good to an novice even, because it's not even a good kit pigeon. If it didn't roll at all, I would have kept flying it. But it could roll, but it was just a bad kit pigeon. But if I didn't watch the pigeons, I wouldn't know that. You've got to watch them all the time.
Can I ask you about young birds, George? How long would you keep a young bird before you were able to say it was going to make it or it wasn't?
I always keep them about 13 months. But see, I'm in a position where I've got plenty of ground, I've got a big shed, so the feed's not that important. I mean, some people have only got a small back garden, so each year they've got to sort their pigeons out before the end of the year and get rid of some of them. Well, I give mine a full 12 months. I mean, I've got pigeons now in my second yearling team, that every time I let them out, there's odd pigeons starting to work. They're coming good now, where they're never old yet. And there's still 30 pigeons in the second team that I've never seen come over. But at the end of, when they're 12, 13 months old, then I can say, well, I can't keep them any longer because I've got this year's youngsters coming on. I mean,
yeah.
So
if you didn't have that space, what advice could you give me, for example, as to how long to keep, where you're limited for space?
if you've got to cut down every year, at the back end of the year, when I say the back end, I mean December, you'll be getting rid of some pigeons that are, you'll be assessing pigeons that are only 5 and 6 months old, some of them. Because if you've only just started, you'll be breeding right through, you'll be breeding late. In fact, you'll be breeding some pigeons that are too late. You'll be better off not breeding them because you won't have time to train them properly. The only way you could do it really would be to try and establish a family of pigeons that developed a bit early. I don't like mine to. I say I don't like them to. If my young birds developed early, I'd be able to compete in young bird competitions. But I prefer to have them develop as they are now. Because the good ones that I get out of my yearlings will be good ones for the next 6 or 7 years. I mean, there's always the exception. I mean, I can have a pigeon that starts rolling at 12 months old, and the first time it starts to roll within a week, it's killed itself. And then you say to yourself, well, perhaps I should have bred early developers, and it could have killed itself at 6 weeks old, and I need to fed it all that time. But the best pigeons I find, my own family of pigeons, are them that develop later. Soon often develop later.
How old is later for you, George?
Well, it don't matter to me, as long as they've developed within the first 15 months.
Yeah.
Say 12 months old.
So when a pigeon say it's 10 or 12 months old, that would be good enough?
Yeah.
If that third round youngsters, yes, they would be.
Yeah.
I think myself that I've got some pigeons that aren't rolling at the moment, and they're third and fourth round youngsters that I've kept on. Now, when the spring comes in, like we get days like today, and we get a fortnight, 3 weeks of glorious weather, and you get the sun on the backs, then you start to see pigeons really fun. And they're pigeons that were doing no good during your back end of last season, and you kept them in the lofts. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of my birds start to really roll when the sun gets on the backs.
The other side of the coin, if you get youngsters rolling deep, just missing, and then you get that one bumping, do you keep them or would you kill them?
Well, here they go. Keep them, give them a chance. If you keep it, you don't want to keep the pigeons as a bump.
No, as youngsters though, early developers, you know, they're coming deep and then suddenly they bump.
Yeah.
And they bump again.
This is what it's saying now. Well, that's what it's saying.
If they continue to bump, they're not good to you. Especially if they're young birds, aren't they?
That's what I'm saying, it's very early development.
What happens usually, no matter what family of pigeons you cultivate or what breed of pigeon you have, what you get them from, you'll find you're going to get a percentage of pigeons develop early, a percentage of pigeons develop when they're 6 to 8 months old, and some wait until they're 12 months old plus before they develop. It's up to you to cultivate the type of pigeon that you require. See, so you choose your breeding stock in accordance to how your pigeons turn out. I say if you want your pigeons to turn out early, well obviously breed up the pigeons that have turned out early. If you want the late developers, then breed up the pigeons that develop late. But you still have a percentage of pigeons that some roll early, some roll not so early, and some roll late.
But they say
what in the main, if you choose to produce the early developers, you will get more early developers than you do late developers.
It's hard enough to breed them to roll. I'm not worried about so many of them's going to develop early and so many late. It's hard enough to get on to breed them to roll.
I know.
Well, I breed early developers because I usually mate early developed pigeons up. And this, I suppose, is why I won the All England 9 times, 10 times, and finished second more times. But I do.
You did always win at the old birds though.
No, often the young birds, you know, I said I specialise in breeding young birds, because I've been at early performance. And invariably, when I do fetch my pigeons out to fly, then I have a bit of a chance with the old birds, but some of the old stock birds I can't fish out now because I value them too much. But nevertheless, the gentleman was saying, what would you do if you had a pigeon roll down? A youngster. Well, it's like you're strung up with this blooming house, you damage yourself. You must give them a good rest. A fortnight, 3 weeks, and build the pigeon up. And then if it does it again, well then it's not enough. But I'm a big believer in giving a pigeon a chance, 1 or 2 chances.
Would you be for a bird that bumps as it came in after a fly?
No way. All the pigeons I put into stock are birds that have never rolled out coming into land. That's one of the things I'm very particular about. Because I have an advantage because I do have poles. That I'll land my birds on poles which are as high as the house, the back of the loft. And if they do roll, they've got the distance of the pole to the loft to cast it up. But if it bounces off the loft, it never makes the grade. And it's one of the things I've always done since I've had the poles up. I mean, a lot of pigeons coming into land on the top of the loft. And once the pigeon starts, the others rolling, and you do get casualties. But as I say, landing the birds on the pole is a big advantage as far as I'm concerned. Because I've got a house at the back of my loft. And the poles are as high as the house.
What do you think of this pole idea, Bill, yourself? 'Cause I
Well,
don't think, I've never seen
I
anything.
don't have poles, but I think they're a good idea.
Yeah.
I think it saves the lives of many good pigeons. I mean, I don't have poles, but I'm not fortunate. I've got an open space around my loft. So the problem is different in a populated area.
That's right.
But I think in the main, poles are a good idea.
I've got one more, mine is a landlord.
You've got too far away from your loft.
It's too far away.
Does it go above your loft?
Well, with the position of my loft, I've got 3 poles. One each end, which is the height of the house, the back of my loft, and I've got one, well, not halfway up, just a few yards up, where when I'm training the young ones to go onto the poles, they fly from the loft to the small pole and then up onto the other pole and onto the taller poles, and they fly backwards and forwards. It's a good thing for breaking your pigeons in from the young stage because they can find the area they're flying in. And then I always remember losing a kit of pigeons about 5 years ago, and Ronnie Snow landed his pigeons on poles, and he was sitting having his breakfast one morning. He said, "Somebody's left me bloody pigeons out of that garden." And he went down the garden, there was 9 of my pigeons on his pole. And I lived 10 miles away, at least 10 miles away, I watched pigeons, and they landed on his pole. He managed to get 6 of them, and ring me to tell me he'd got 6 of the pigeons. I was overjoyed with it. But see, they used to landing on the pole, they wouldn't land on theirs.
I think a bird, from what I've seen at your house and other people's house that have poles, I think that when a bird's coming to land on the top, the main thing is he keeps his head forward, looking down at his feet.
And his feet are there.
Yeah,
He's not in a rolling position.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I think it is an advantage.
I'm definitely winning some this year.
Can I ask George, how do you decide which of your kit birds become stock birds? What do you look for?
Well, at the moment, I'm starting to look for frequency. Up until about 3 years ago, I was just looking for a pigeon that had rolled well. Now I'm starting to mark him and look for pigeons that are frequent. And that's what I want to try and breed of, frequent pigeons. See, there's plenty of rollers that will roll once a week.
That's
There's a lot of pigeons that roll once a week, and they're good rollers. I mean, you come to my house and see a pigeon, it can be fantastic. The next time you come a month later, you'll say, "Where's that black and white that was rolling?" And I'll say, "It's in the kit," and you don't see it rolling. Because it's not consistent enough. So, but good velocity rollers, are few and far between. So, I mean, even if you've got 200 pigeons, you've been doing it a long time, you still don't get a shed.
Does it make any difference if it's a shot or not, like that?
You mean for breeding?
You want the
Because
speed.
I got one hen of you for 2 years ago, the white hen. She's one of the best, but she's not very deep.
Well, you have to tell whether a roller is deep enough or not. You know how deep a deep roller should be.
Well, I should know, right? It's already 4 years I've been there.
Well, I tell you, if you can watch it roll, it's rolling deep enough. If you can't watch it roll, it's too short. Then it kicks a break and it rolls over that, the break's over that quick that you can't follow the pigeon. If you can see them roll and watch them roll, they're rolling deep enough. But if they do a break, and when they finish the break, the kick still has a kick, they're not coming deep.
What you must bear in mind, some pigeons are very, very deep. It hasn't got the velocity that of pigeons that are only half the distance. Velocity is taken into consideration when you're choosing your stock birds. you must accept the fact that you're looking for a certain depth, performance-wise, but velocity must be your goal.
Must be a
Because
great.
you'll find a pigeon perhaps they can, let's say a pigeon that can roll 8 yards and fight against a pigeon that's rolling 10 yards. Possibly that pigeon that rolls 8 yards is evolving more times in that particular 8 yards than the pigeon that's rolling 10 yards. Velocity is your guideline.
Well, if you best roll all of a sudden and you lose it, there's always another one that takes its place, same as an handsome stuff.
Yes.
It's still got, if you best roll in your shed, and everybody's got a favourite pigeon, and it's normally the one that's the most frequent and the fastest. That's your favourite pigeon, or most people, isn't it? But if that pigeon, if you lose it or it dies, rolls down and kills itself, another one takes its place.
That's once you've got an established.
You never seem to have two pigeons, two champions in the shed. Or you never see two, very seldom do you see two champions in one kit. It don't matter whose flock you go to, if there's a good pigeon in the kit, every good roller fancier will pick that one pigeon out, and they'll all see the one pigeon. Well, they won't pick two out. Very rarely they'll pick two out in anybody's kit. There's always one that's that little bit better than everything else in the kit.
Yeah.
Would any of you breed with yearlings, or would you wait till you're older?
What puts it into stocks, I'm going to tell you, breeds
I breed up yearlings that have proved themselves over the season.
Yeah.
And here again, I don't pair two yearlings together. I always pair a yearling cock to an old hen and vice versa. And I get a lot of success from it. But
What's
some
your
people,
reason for not pairing two yearlings together? Is it just lack of experience?
well, with two yearlings paired together, you'll find that they're likely to desert the youngsters and start mating again. And if you've got an old hen and a pair to a young cock, she will, and vice versa, if you've got two yearlings paired together, that's the only tendency against them, is that they start mating too quickly before the young ones are any size, and then the young ones die, and you wonder why.
Is there a preference for an older cock than a 2-year-old cock?
I beg your pardon?
Is there a preference for an older cock to a yearling hen?
Yeah, that's it. I'll cock to a young hen.
Every time? No, no, then or vice versa.
Vice versa.
Or is there a preference? That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
You find it's better with an older cock?
Old cock to a young hen,
All the time?
and an old hen to a young cock.
When you're choosing a pair for mating, do you choose, you put a short one to a long one, would you put two medium ones together?
Well, no, I fear the best, irrespective of depth and speed. Someone said to me this year, Tommy Jones happened to say, he said, your pigeons ain't rolling so deep this year as they were last year and the year before. I said, well, I've been promoted this year. This is why I bought the aircross in.
That's why, the reason why I asked that is to prove a point.
We keep on striving to do the impossible every year. Some years you get disappointed, other years you're elated. And to be consistent year after year, it's a joy really, and I want to see a lot of these young fanciers make the grade. This is the most important, because with television and all this rest of, there's not many lads coming into the pigeon fancy. And I should like to see this fancy die, because it's given me great pleasure over a lifetime. And if I can be of any help to any youngster, I'm always willing to try and help them. But people say to me, you sell your pigeons. I have to sell my pigeons. I'm an old age pensioner. I've got no other income on an old age pension. And in another instance, I'll say this, I sell pigeons because I have to buy the corn. But in another respect, if you give pigeons away, people don't value them. It's another thing. So that, if I breed 100 pigeons, I could sell 20 or 30 pigeons out of that, and that's my corn. That's my corn built the next season.
We'll have a whip round for you later on, Bob, don't worry.
That's not, somebody's going to what
It's not money, it's a big lash one.
Well, the thing is, you say, you've heard me say I've been suffering from financial cramp for years.
A long time before you were an old age pensioner.
Everything's your bloody cost is £45 a bloody.
You want to sit down? You want to sit down? I don't know.
Mr. Chair, can I ask one further question? In David Kowalski's book,
Sit down, Mr. Cullen, please.
in Kowalski's book, he says that when birds roll, they flap the wings as they roll in the roll. What's your opinion of that? Do you think that the pigeons actually propel themselves backwards?
Well, I've seen a slow motion film.
What's to do with the wing?
I've seen a slow motion film, and the Americans term it as cranking, and believe you me, they actually do. They crank like that as they're going round. They do.
Okay, is that the opinion of all the panel?
Well, I definitely think the wings do obviously when they start to roll, you see them like that. But I mean, there's some just there, and some you can see them doing it.
Okay.
You know, obviously.
Do you think there's any possibility that there are different types of rollers, some that propel themselves and some that don't? Is that possible?
I think there's some effort's got to be put into it now, somewhere. I mean, you just got to go over and over like that. I mean, even a person, I mean, you're like a human being when he's on a diving board and he's diving, he's going to do a somersault in the air. He's got to propel himself, he's got to put a certain amount of effort into it.
Yeah, but he doesn't propel himself all the way down, does he?
Once it's
No,
set up.
he gets started into it there, but the law of gravity only allows him to fall. His weight brings him down, but we're talking about revolving. It's not a voluntary action, it's not an involuntary action. He's got to force himself to revolve.
But if you see a diver from a high board doing a forward or backward somersault, then he hasn't got wings to propel himself.
I mean, he's got arms, which is a self-same thing.
But he doesn't flap his arms.
He puts the pressure on his arm.
He also only does one or two or three. He doesn't do hundreds of revolutions, does he?
He don't really
Could
matter.
do.
Yeah, we don't really matter how they do it, as long as they do it.
I think you're right. I don't think it matters too much, George. But I've been watching some slow motion film, and I think that I can see some that do and some that don't. And in fact, the ones that don't seem to be smoother in the performance.
They shorter wing strokes.
Yeah.
Just like an ice skater, they start off doing a spin. If they pull their arms in, they get faster. And if they put them out, it gets slower. There's less of a full. Ones that can have a sort of head, the wings out, it's very slumpy. I've got to ask this question.
I mean, I saw quite a few birds. My shepherd was one particular bird, I think you did yourself, Graham. But birds that were in the row, one particular bird used to stick its wing right out. Remember that bird? And I thought it was quite amusing to see that bird do that. It seemed to be cranking on one wing. Although the bird came down in a straight line.
Maybe one.
But it didn't look right.
It didn't look like
That's
that.
right.
Some of them are all forward, you know.
Oh, we saw. Yeah, never know.
Have you seen that one?
Roll forward.
I'm glad you put that on record, George.
That's the fall around, that old
Have you ever seen one roll forward?
George.
I've will seen one roll forward.
Listen,
Powers of observation, that's where you're at.
listen,
There
you
are breed of pigeons in some part of the country where they go up and roll up. That's you're going to see them.
there's some pigeons that I just want to get. Don't die.
Dolly, but all of those. Well, these are the things that's on to import from Holland. I'm a different big believer in these pigeons, and Dr. Chris Davis is interested in getting some of these pigeons out where they go in the air, and all of a sudden they die. You know, but to me, I'm a roller man, I'm a diving man.
I think we've got a question here from Mr.
Definitely get a question. I don't know if anybody can answer this.
Somebody quite.
Let's say you don't change your matings up, and you breed two kits from the same stock pairs. Why is it one kit doesn't behave the same way as the other kit?
because they're flying in different conditions.
But if you fly them, you know, you're flying them at the same time.
You can't, can you?
Well, when you can switch them around every other day. One might fly at 9 in the morning.
I've got
one might
answers
fly
for
at
that.
10.
Well, the conditions that you fly the two kits in are going to be different times. I mean, you can fly one kit at 9 o'clock in the morning, and fly another one at 10:30, and then be flying in two different
But I mean,
conditions.
12 months later, they'll still be different.
Oh, John, I'll
Right,
John,
Well, one might perform slightly better than another.
You're going to get your good pigeons and your bad pigeons in each kit.
That's what I mean.
Now, I mean, I've always flown two kits of youngsters. And you're going to get your good pigeons and your bad pigeons in each kit.
Yeah.
The idea of flying two kits of young birds is usually based on the fact that you've got too many to fly in one particular kit. By overloading the young bird kit, and that's not good for management, that's not good for training business, you see.
What's the number you like?
Well, I'd say about 25 to 30 young birds. Some people can't control a kit of 30 young birds, it's rather difficult. But I always fly two kits of young birds. But what the breeder always does, and this is without exception, he always tries to push all the good pigeons in one particular kit. Because he wants more good pigeons in the one particular kit. As they turn out, he puts them all into one kit. And I've yet to know a person to spec two kits of pigeons separate to a period of 12 months. I know I've never had one. I always shop and trade. I've got two kits of pigeons at the moment that I've been buying. One kit of 45 since after the national flight. Up to the national flight, I've got 3 young bird kits. And I've got a kit of 30 on and 2 kits of 20 on. And after the national flight, I put the 2 20-odd kits together. And now I'm flying a kit of 45. But they've got some very, very good pigeons in them, so they don't want to do rubbish.
Don't you feel like taking the good ones out? Are they something kids for it?
No, it's not necessarily to take the good ones out because they fly out of the kit and they perform well in the kit. And I fly for my own benefit and my own enjoyment.
Well, I think when you're flying a big kit like that, the only problem is, as you say yourself, there's some rubbish in them, there's bad about a 45.
That's right.
It's better to see a kit, it's better to select the best 20 and see them do a break than see a break out of a kit of 45 where the summers are chasing the tails and tumbling about. Because they spoil the kit, I think.
Not necessarily yours, because we've all got pigeons that at one particular time is capable of executing a very, very good role. And at another time, depending on what position he is, when the kit breaks, if he's in the wrong position, he's not going to roll correctly and it's picking it up a bit.
Well, I agree with you there, but what I'm saying is that the kit of 45, as you say yourself, there's some that are no good. There's some rubbish. The rubbish is better to be taken out, isn't it? I agree with you.
Maybe I'm using the wrong word in rubbish. I would say that the pigeons that they're not distinguishable in performance-wise.
They don't know anything wrong in the kit.
They don't know anything wrong in the kit, but they have yet to make the grade as a performer. But if you have a kit of 45 and you get a half grade, so you're getting 22 pigeons altogether. Now, that's worth looking at. I think anyway. I like to fly a big kit because I like to see good flights. And the more you fly, the more you have to. I mean, it's not easy to fly a big kit of rollers. I mean, it's not easy to fly a kit of 20. We all have probably big kits of 20. But to fly a kit of 40 plus, it takes a bit of handling. Fortunately, I'm not at work, so consequently, I can find my pigeon bringers, give them plenty of flying, plenty of management training. And I can manage a big kit by virtue of training them regularly. And I like to see a big kit where there's plenty of performance, plenty of action.
You fly in below one kit box or two, one kit box and 2 kit boxes.
They're not flying in a kit box, because they're flying out of a lot.
You do fly a kit box.
I do fly out of a kit box, a kit of 45 is flying out of a lot.
There is one thing, for anybody that's not kept Birmingham rollers on, if you're flying a kit of Birmingham rollers and you've only got 3 good rollers in your kit, you'll find that them 3, if they're flying with 17 as a no good, that's a straight flyer morning, them 3 decent pigeons will end up now straight flyers, they'll sell them. It sounds daft, but you've got to establish yourself a kit of 20 working pigeons. I don't say all champions or all perfect rollers, I mean, but they've got to be working to get the breaks. to get your good ones working, because if you've only got 3 good rollers or 3 reasonably good rollers flying with 17 that are more or less straight flyers, they'll turn you 3 good ones into straight flyers.
Yes,
You're not getting the brakes out on.
if that was me, I should split them up into 2 tents
Yeah.
and watch for the performance of the others and gradually put 10 together.
Well, it's
Rather than
time to do
fly.
it, Bob, isn't it?
Well, there again, you being a journalist, you can't do it, but
What's,
reaching the old age of...
what kind of mixes?
I can do that.
What kind of mixes do you feed? How much do you train? How much do you vary your mixes like when you get them ready for competitions? What kind of
I
mixes
put
do you
mine
feed?
on, I've been since December, since roughly Boxing Day, the day after Christmas Day. So we have a competition in Derby on Boxing Day. And up until then, all my birds were in competition. They were all kept in competition feed. And then once Boxing Day was over, they went on a mixture, and the mixture could consist of anything, but basically it was wheat, kibble maize, milo, and a few peas. And it could have seed in it as well, 2 or 3 times a week. They had more or less anything. Right up until a week last Friday. And a week last Friday, I put 1, 2, 3, I put 3 teams of pigeons on milo, straight milo. That was a week last Friday. And I flew a kit of yearlings yesterday, 21 in the kit. And the day before, they had 1 tin of milo, 1 baked bean tin of milo. Baked bean tins about that big. I forget how many grams you told. They flew for around 20 minutes on that.
Red milo.
Yes,
On
yeah.
milo. And eventually, I'll get that kit doing 3/4 of an hour on a 3/4 tin of milo. But they'll only be flown every other day. And the day that I fly, they'll get a full tin of milo when they come in. And the following day, when I rest them, they'll get 3/4 of a tin of milo. And eventually, I'll have them pigeons doing 3/4 of an hour on the feed.
Yeah. What do you feed, Bob?
Well, the other thing I was going to say was they'll stop on that milo now, right through the season, right up until December now, then flying teams will go on
You give
milo.
many oil seeds with that?
No, they just have the straight milo, but eventually, say after 6 or 7 weeks, if all of a sudden they start dropping early, or if they go a bit too high in condition, I might give them a handful of maple peas or 2 handfuls of canary seed and millet mix.
Do you give them any vitamin supplement?
I don't give them no vitamins in the water at all. I don't give them no health grip either. No pigeon minerals.
Do you have any problems with feathers getting brittle through a season and breaking and this sort of thing?
No.
What you find with milo, milo is a very high energy feed, you know. And I feed primarily milo with my flying birds. I find that I'm not careful, I've got the bloody fish flying 2 and 3 hours on milo alone. But although I'm a firm believer in milo, different people fly on different mixtures. At the end of the day, it's what you're looking for in performance, and some people can do it on milo, some people can do it on wheat, some do it on a mixture. But if I continue feeding your birds on milo, you will find you'll eventually have your pigeons roll to such an extent that I was self-farming. Every now and again, you've got to take the milo off them and give them a build-up feed. I usually give them condition seed for a couple of days and rest them about every fortnight. Not doing the flying birds.
A day's rest of a pigeon is as good as a tom. A flying pigeon, a day's rest of a fly pigeon is as good as a tom.
There's another thing a lot of people don't seem to appreciate with a flying pigeon, especially if they're flying in boxes. The importance of having a back. Now, if you've got a kit of flying birds, get them ready for competition. Make sure that they bath frequently, at least once a week. And I prefer to put a spoonful of salt, table salt in the water. And my kit, if I was a training a kit for flying competition, for say for example, in 10 days' time, I would give them 2 baths between now and when they flew in competition. But the last bath would be 2 or maybe 3 days prior to the competition flight.
What's the idea of that?
George, look at it this way. We're all working men. There's many ones that well, you was, exception. You're all recognized. I've worked hard many times, and at the end of the day, you're such a good town, and when you come home at night, you jump into a lovely bath. It refreshes you, doesn't it?
On a line.
The pigeon that have a bath isn't healthy. If your pigeons haven't had a bath for a week and you put a bath in, and they don't go in the water, and there's something wrong with the pigeons, they're not healthy.
So what do I do in that way? Some of them they like to go in the bath straight away, some of them they don't want it.
It's the big. It's the main thing, it's also.
Bring down my
All of them have to leave it in.
And then pick on yourself. I've known the time I've sprayed my pigeons with the water when they've been in the water.
Because some of them, they like to go in, but I won't pick up the bath, they're crowded another. They don't want to go in.
One thing about the fly boxes, if you're using fly boxes, the small fly boxes, something like 4 foot long by 3 foot high and 3 foot deep. And if you've got them darkened off, if you've got solid doors on the front so they're darkened off altogether. If it's an old bird team, it only wants flying every other day. You don't want flying every day. If you fly it every day, you'll make them into straight flies when they work. So they only want flying every other day. So I've got 2 fly boxes in one compartment. So I fly one team one day and one the next day, weather permitting. And the day that I fly a kit, the day that the kit's being rested, I leave the fly box doors open, and there's a 4 foot space in front of them where I put a bath in. And mine get a bath 2 or 3 times a week, or I put one in anyway. So they have a day in the fly box, and then they have a day out. I fly them. The day that I fly them, when I get them in, I leave them loose. And the following day, they're boxed up, so they have a day locked up and a day out. If you keep them locked up all the time, they'll deteriorate terribly. They'll go all broken feathers, and they'll go in poor condition, you'll have road disease. Yeah. And I say if you clean it out twice a day, you can't keep them like that.
Can you excuse me, gentlemen, what's over on there?
What about a down box?
If you have a break, so that they can
Would
go.
you get a down kit box?
Well, I've built 2 kit boxes that are not about 5 years ago. And there's times when I think the kit is out of an ordinary compartment, a 4 foot wide by 6 foot deep compartment, flies just as well. But then there's times when that kit will go off and I'll put it in a fly box. You must do something different with them. If you're flying out of a fly box, if you're flying out of an open compartment, and you've got a good team of pigeons and they start to sell them, so they're not rolling frequently. If you put them in a fly box and dart them off and leave them there for 2 days and fly them again, that'll be the one, or it does for me anyway. But you've got, if they're in a fly box all the time, they get used to that, and you need to do something different. You've got to have something different to bring the roll out of them. You've got to do different things all the time. It's like Widows racing a race.
Bring out the rope. Change of feet can bring out the rope.
You've got to, see, it's like, I don't know whether they're kept racing for you, I know Bill Garner's kept racing for you, so I know when they're racing Widow, they do different things to encourage that cock to get back. Sometimes they show it down, and sometimes they'll just give it the nest back. They do different things, and you've got to do the same with rollers.
Stop getting stale, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's not get stale, yeah.
Going back to this speed, George, you were talking about Milo, you just put them on it. For the benefit of other people that may want to look at this film later, do you feed your young birds the same way? And I'd like to ask Bill.
No, my young birds, right from even the yearlings, well, the yearlings now have gone on Milo, the last year's youngsters, but right up until the week last Friday, those youngsters had as much as they wanted to eat, no one bothered out what they flew for.
It's more mixed corn.
Well, they had 4 parts wheat, 1 part Milo and 1 part kibble maize.
Yeah.
During the winter months. Yeah. In the summer, I knock the kibble maize off.
What's kibble maize?
Crack corn.
Indian corn.
Split maize.
Split maize.
You call it kibble maize.
Well, we call it kibble maize. In America, they call it crack
Before you
corn.
feed that, you sieve it.
Pardon?
You sieve the kibble maize then?
No, because if you buy it from a decent place, I buy it from a mill. And I can get French maize that's been split. And it's not, you can put your hand in the bag and it's clean when it comes out, no dust.
It's all split maize I've had to sieve it.
Yeah, well, you're getting foul corn, that's what it is. The stuff that you get is ever so small, it's
They extract the oil out of it, and all the source of it, the oil is gone.
What would you say on this feeding thing, Bill? We do young birds, and what do you feed them milo, or do you feed them other things?
Now, for young birds, initially, they're fed on a mixture of wheat, kibble maize, milo and feeds. And the youngsters are fed on this right until they're 12 years old. With the exception of my young bird kit that I might use for competition purposes. If I'm training a young bird kit for competition purposes, they are on primarily milo. But normally my sick pigeons are fed on a good ration.
You know when you train a kit of birds, you know when you train a kit of birds, youngsters,
For competition.
yeah. Do you put an older bird, a couple of older birds in, that can roll really well to teach them? Do you use this?
No, that's not necessary. I'll put old birds with my young bird kit when I'm first training them for flying purposes only. Just preferably pigeons that are not turned out, pigeons that are, 12 months old and not turned out.
Yeah.
And I'll put them with the young birds for the purpose of stabilising the young bird kit. But once that kit is capable of flying properly and fitting properly, then I take them old birds out.
You don't think that young rollers would copy another roller? You know when you get them, they get saying to start the book, begin to split. And you put a bird in with some depth and style it off, you can speed. You don't think the young bird will copy it then?
I think young birds can be encouraged to roll, but I've never tried it myself. Because you're always going to get the early developer anyway.
It's either there or it's taken, John. It's either there or it's taken. It's no good for an old bird. The old bird's not going to show it how to roll.
No, but I think you can induce youngsters to roll and roll in a better style by doing this. I like to put 3 or 4 hens in actually. If you go
I think if a Birmingham roller's bred and it's going to roll, it's going to roll. If it's going to roll with velocity, it's going to roll with
I
velocity.
agree with you.
Can I?
How many old birds you put where it's not making roll any better?
I would tend to agree with you, George.
Can I just-
If you have a regular rolling adult, it may help your kit maybe to work. But as far as like the style or the velocity of it, I think that's genetic. I'd say the introversion.
Yeah, it's a good idea to fly perhaps 3 old hens that are steady. You want a Birmingham roller with a nice wing action. In actual fact, what you need is a Birmingham roller to fly with the wing action of a tippler.
Yeah.
And if you can get a kit flying like that, and you can do it, provided you live in an area where you don't get lots of downwinds. If you can get lifting winds, and you're fortunate to be there all day again, where you pick your time for flying, if you can fly in the right weather conditions, you can have your birds flying with a nice steady wing action, like a butterfly action. And if you can get them nice and steady like that, if they're capable of doing any work, they'll roll like hell. But if it's windy and they're racing the wind all the time, and they're out with your kitties, they're not going to do anything. But I mean, people that's flown rollers training with time know all that anyway.
Yeah.
But if you go back to
Ideally, we need a place to live. If anybody, if you put this video out, if anybody lives anywhere where they've got weather conditions where they get nice lifting winds, I don't mean like in California where they take them through the top and you lose them.
Yeah.
Nice lifting conditions, no strong winds. Then
All move there.
that's the place we will live. We'll almost go.
one of the things you said earlier, though, George, I think which made a lot of sense, is if you get 17 straight flyers and 3 rollers, then the 3 rollers soon become straight flyers.
And
I think,
obviously, how does he get 20 active pigeons?
yeah, but I mean, in relationship to what John was saying about can you put some old birds in to help the youngsters develop, I think that there's a similar point. If you want to encourage some youngsters to roll, to get into the habit of rolling more frequently, then flying some old birds or putting them into an old bird team, I found does pep them up quite a lot.
You get some young birds that start to roll as under speed and are obviously frightened by the very action of it. Now, if there's another bird that's kind of zipping a roll off and he doesn't become as frightened, I quite often take out a young bird and put it with the old birds.
Yeah.
For 2 reasons. One is that it's not flown as often and you get as much hard work.
Yeah.
And the other is to see other rollers doing this voluntary action outside of it, where his action is a slightly involuntary. Do you understand what I mean?
I think that was the point I was picking up really, John.
I would like to come back on this tippler business of flying tipplers with young birds. Now, the tippler wing action is
Straight flying with them.
That's the sort of action. No, well, in case any novices might think it's a good idea to fly tippers with his rollers, his youngboard rollers, to enable to develop the nice good flow wing action. Be very, very wary, because the tipper got the correct wing action you're looking for, but his style of flight is totally foreign to good flying rollers. And what you're going to find that if you do this, and you fly tippers with your youngbird kit, those tippers are eventually going to fly that youngbird kit away. Now, because the tipper is an endurance figure, and he can fly all bloody day if necessary if the conditions are right. But nevertheless, your young rollers don't want to do all that.
Yeah. Well, if you fly rollers, if you flew 2 rollers with a kit of 14 racing pigeons, the rollers would soon start flying like racing birds. They follow their style.
Yeah,
This is the sort of thing I'll try anyway.
I can remember losing a pigeon years and years ago, and a tipper bloke, and a racing bloke fled it. And he used to send it in the bloody basket with his races. He used to come. He bloody used to come.
I can use some of that in my role.
You know, I don't know how far the distance was, but he used to put it in the bloody basket and he used to come. And when I did back eventually, it used to go around like a bloody you know, it's better to good bread than I kept it.
There's something about that, but I looked like they had a fancier cross in his racing lot. He had a fancier here as a dropper. And they hadn't had pair to race a cock, they had the name, they were a black pied fancier, half fancier. And they were a loser, they were a young cock and they were losing, toddler right in this. And there were 3 of us used to send our pigeons training together in a pannier, 45 foot pannier. We seen them only about 20 miles now, and he took this cross fancier in it. And they do a thunderstorm on television. Cross fancier, we'd only pigeon over. Couldn't believe it, we'd only pigeon over one night.
I bet his feet were sore, Bill.
I have an old fantail, she's 17-year-old, and I use as a dropper, garden fantail, and that fantail flicks over with my rollers. Now then, this is, harking back to what we're saying about putting good ends in with the new 2 rollers. My fantail has flown that well and that often with the rollers, it flicks over. I also fly cumulus at a certain stage in my rollers, and they attempt to flick over. They will quite often tail right.
Mind you, it's up right into them, John, because some of the Orlics I had on it before. One because they were flat.
No, but maybe fantail, you know what I mean?
Yeah, fantail.
We all, I mean,
Cumulus, would they have a bit of them, like?
no, they quite regularly ride the tail on, they stop it. They don't
What about your dog?
that makes you flick over. You want to stroke it, Bill, and make it roll.
Well, talking about young bird kits,
Oh,
I think the greatest enjoyment any fancier has is watching his birds turn out.
Yeah,
You fly a young kit of pigeons and you get them in the air, and you're watching them a whole of the time they're flying with it. That's going to make it good. That's going to be no good. That's going to be good. And you can, when you watch them for years like I have, you know the pigeons that are going to be your outstanding pigeons from a very early age.
Can you tell them in the pan?
I can't tell them in the pan, no. There was,
I mean, it might sound a ridiculous question that, but you know, there's lots of times certain feeders that know the birds can tell, you know, if they get a bird in the pan now. Barry Shackman always maintained to me that in his birds that if he got a blue grizzle standing a feather in this, he used to kill it because it never turned out.
I think he was putting up case.
hey, John.
I'll let you have this later, Barry.
John, I never put mine in the pan.
No, really.
I never put mine in the pan until I killed them.
And then you condemn them.
Will it,
You
John?
condemn them from the
We
living.
killed all the pan, I wouldn't talk about, would
I said the most interesting part of the hobby is flying your youngsters. And you fly them, and you watch them, and you fly them daily, and it isn't long before you can start sorting your pigeons out. I mean, some people fly the pigeon, they couldn't tell you whether it's a blue and roll or the black and roll or anything. But if you've got, I mean, I pride myself on having a very good eyesight at my own age now, at 76. But I can tell almost every pigeon I fly. The only stag I've got now is I breed them many bloody whitens. I have to either pull some feathers out of the tail, cut some feathers, or colour the tails. But you can watch your pigeons, and I think that's the greatest enjoyment, is watching a team of youngsters develop. And to me, it's a great joy.
If you've got a competition on a Sunday, when do you fly an old bird, well, any competition, old or young, if you've got a competition on a Sunday, when do you fly your pigeons last?
I never fly them the day before.
Never fly them the day before?
Never.
So, if you've got a competition on the Sunday, you fly them on the Friday?
That's right.
And how long would you expect them to fly on the Friday?
Probably a quarter of an hour.
Only a quarter of an hour on the Friday?
Because I've been knocked down.
Yeah, very good. How long would you fly? 2 hours. Same, would you?
Yeah, I would give them a day's rest, but I don't always do that. I'll give the old birds a day's rest, but it depends on the weather conditions leading up to the flight. If you get a situation where you get 14 days good flying weather, I'll fly my old birds every other day, and I would rest them the day before the flight.
And how long would you expect them to fly?
It's something that I can't control with my pigeons. My pigeons will fly.
That's because you've got a good position, so do you reckon?
No, replace that.
There's two different things here being said in it, George. I mean, no, obviously not in bird back. Well, the difference in pigeons. You know, there's a difference in who's handling what and doing what. I mean, Bill is obviously not treating his birds in the same way in which Bob is. Bob just said that he knocks his pigeons back.
Yes.
Bob builds his pigeons up coming up to competition. No, he builds them up coming up to competition. All right.
I do knock them back a week before I fly, usually. They're on a very mediocre ration, and I only use wheat. I never use anything else. I do use Milo, but nothing that
You
ball.
might know that much, but some decent corn.
And you all built to the flag. What did it?
Well, I was trying to explain to all the old birds, wild birds, you know, we never fly them more than 4 times a week, you know. But a lot depends on the weather conditions. But leading up to a competition flight, my old bird kit would be flown every other day, which would leave me the day before the flight, a day's rest, you know. And I would feed them a normal ration. I don't ration a pigeon, I give them 1 full feed a day. But on the day before the flight, they'd be rested and they would only have half the normal ration.
Would you
My old bird kit, depending on the weather, could fly 1-2 hours, you know.
Would you alter anything that day before the flight? Would you alter them in the feed?
Yes, I would give them the same feed, but the same type of food, but only half of the normal ration. But my young bird kit, bearing in mind you're talking about pigeons of 6 or 8 months old, I would never rest my young bird kit the day before the flight, unless because the weather conditions I was forced to.
How many times a day would you fly a young bird kit?
Initially 2 days, twice a day.
Twice a day.
Again, depending on the condition.
You're the same.
I fly mine 3 times a day when they're first in their infancy.
Yeah.
You know, but as they gradually improve the roll and the tumble and movement, then I would fly them once a day. And gradually, and then I'm a big believer in giving them a rest. Even the young birds, because I think myself that it's like an athlete. If they get them trained up, but they don't run the day before.
No.
They already give them a day's rest.
If your birds have gone off the boil, if you're not getting a lot of music out of them coming up to a competition, what would you do to bring them back on?
Well, this is one of the things that I say, if you're going to fly rollers, you've got to watch your front pigeons. I mean, you've got front pigeons that have always been rolling, and all of a sudden they go up it. And the front pigeons are the most important pigeons in your kit. There, I've rested some of my front pigeons for 3 days and 4 days and then put them up with again, and they got the music back.
So what you're saying is you would rest them?
Yes.
If they went off the wall, you'd rest them?
I rest those front
What would you
pigeons.
do?
I can remember years ago having a blue
No, I'm not talking, man.
Keep talking about that.
I remember having a blue cock years ago, and he was the fireball in the team. And they were, everything put them out, they were wonderful to watch. And then gradually, I saw them depreciate. I thought, well, I can't understand this, what? They're not doing the same as they were a week ago. And you're watching these pigeons. And I watched this self-blue cock, and he was turning them rather than rolling. So I decided to rest him for a day. And the following day, the team was back to music again. And then I finished up during the week. I'm flying once a week with them. Because he was one of those type of pigeons that would only roll after he'd had a rest. But if you fed him every day, he wouldn't roll, and he was a front pigeon. The most important part of your kit is the front pigeons. If your front pigeons don't start, you're handicapped.
Well, I tell you what, I watch my own with the pigeons, I watch them all the time, I fly them, and I'm probably fancy a pigeon that's at the front all the time.
Well, what do you do is you go one hand and you put them in two different cocks, right?
Yeah,
And they're both very good youngsters.
yeah.
What do you do in that circumstances?
Kill them.
Well, if you get success in that mating, you might exactly the same way.
No, what I'm saying is you got one hand, right? And you use that with two different cocks.
Yeah.
With both cocks, she produces good youngsters. They're good.
You got a great champion on your hands, haven't you?
I'm not talking for you. You know what I'm talking about. How do you know that?
I'll get you, Bill. I'll get you, man. I'll fix you.
What do you do in that circumstances?
Well, we ain't got back to this question, finish this question.
Yeah, sorry. I forget about my question.
If you've got a pigeon, those good pigeons,
Yeah.
with two or more cocks,
236. I'm talking about that.
you should use that. You should use that pigeon. That pigeon is very, very valuable.
The hand I'm talking about 236. He's about 2247. And she was paid out for 62. The cost 62.
Can we just get back to the feed?
You know when you said a full feed, Bill, what? Are you talking, you said you give them a full feed each day, you don't ration them, you're talking as much as they'll eat, or what you're talking? As much as they'll eat once a day.
I've never been guilty of doing that.
Would you like to tell us your feeding method, Bob?
Well, they call it Bob Brown's magic spoon. I mean, when the South Africans came over here,
They wanted to buy it.
they wanted to buy the spoon. I said,
Listen.
"You can't have the bloody spoon."
Listen to this.
I'm going to listen.
Don't keep coming to my place and tell me my pigeons are starving.
There is that.
I give them my flying
They
pigeons.
will not
I
know, yeah.
feed them one spoonful of wheat. And if they fly more than half an hour, instead of having 20 spoonfuls of wheat, they have 18. And if they do it the next day, they have 16 spoonfuls. But I only want the pigeons to fly half an hour.
Yeah?
And this is the ration, that's something I've always done. Because there's nothing so easy as flying the pigeons away.
Excuse me.
I mean, my area is probably the bad area.
It's not my youngsters, I give them
Well, Bill gives it. Bill's in a
They
different
fly
area.
every 30 minutes.
The question is,
I don't have the food on, I give them more.
Hold on, Bob, I haven't yet, I'll talk to you.
You give them what they all eat, well, I don't.
Ration.
Yeah, all right.
I never do. You'll find a spoon in my corn bit, my stock pigeons have as much as they can eat. But the flying pigeons have a spoonful per bird. And if the flies are wrong, I'll listen to cook, I'll listen to spoon. And this is, during the summer, I'll probably bed 80 youngsters and I'm flying 3 teams of youngsters.
You fly meat, you feed a mix, Bob,
No, only wheat.
only wheat.
Oh, that's the cheapest corn, isn't it?
You don't feed no dairy.
Well, I do buy dairy, but that's like a
Luxury.
booster to them if they
It's
get
sweet
that.
cake.
The turkey comes cheaper than the.
And you'll find the flour right now, well, the opposite flour.
That's why I wheat. Well, I'll go back to the days of the war, when you couldn't get bloody corn. And I used to go down, I pigeons in my father's stables, because we get another pub there. And they were fed and reared there was a bakery by the pub, and I used to go down to the bakery and collect all the bits off the floor and feed the pigeons and roll the bread. And if someone used to go down the bloody fields and bring bagfuls of wheat and blow and dry them in the oven and feed the pigeons the wheat, and all they lived on was wheat and bread. That's how I kept my pigeons along doing good. Because I was in a reserve occupied, so I didn't have to go.
So you feed your flying birds all the time, all through the year, more or less only?
On weeks, yes. And I buy half a ton at a time. And that's my milk feed.
Has anyone ever tried barley?
I don't like barley. I can give you an instance when I remember the great old Harris coming to see me. And he said, Bobby, if I were you, I'd put these on barley for a week or two. So I went and bought some barley. And after a fortnight, they wanted to roll amongst us. I've never used barley since.
No.
I've never ever used barley since. I had some wheat come with some barley in, I sent it bloody back.
It's the most underrated feed there is barley.
Oh, so you like it?
Most underrated feed there is.
Razor.
Depending how you manage it and what type, there's numerous types of barley now in various stores, isn't there?
If you can get malted barley from the maltsters,
Yeah.
barley that's, you want malting barley from the farm, which is the top quality barley, and then it goes to a maltsters, and they malt it, and then they send it to a brewery for making the beer. And that's when you want it, just before it leaves, when it leaves the maltsters, that's when you want it, malted barley.
I'm not talking about primarily barley itself, you're talking about barley coated with bloody malt.
Yeah.
What is it?
What is malted barley do to
Well,
But it's got the other stuff, has it? You got the other stuff. Because they always leave the barley, but this is why I said the wheat back. Wait, no, and then the barley will let them mix it.
don't eat any of them.
Well, I'm probably not used to it, because mine eat barley, right? I don't like to think about it.
That's the next one. That's the only time I use barley. Only Harris and I probably on barley.
I remember what was the time
She knocked the roll straight out. I wish I had told him.
Can we have you answering that question, what John asked you then, though? It's forgot about it. Okay. What you do when your birds have gone off the hole?
Yeah, I asked that.
No, did John ask?
Of course
Oh,
I
well,
did.
I'm sorry.
I am.
No one's got a chance to answer us.
I'm not surprised.
What was the question?
What was the question?
When your birds have gone off the hole, what do you do? How do you get them back on the hole?
You're always going to come up against this problem, you know, you're very off. Right, you go through a phase when your pigeons aren't doing as well as they should do. And I find that resting them up, you know, and changing the diet. That's usually does the trick for me. But sometimes it's a matter of the very season and the flying conditions that create that situation where the pigeons don't want to roll. I mean, last couple of 3 years we've been subjected to a lot of heavy winds.
Yeah.
And you've had situations where you've got to take a chance and put your pigeons out in certain winds and under normal circumstances you wouldn't put them out. So, and flying pigeons in a consistent wind, to me, it's not very good because they do go off the roll. They want pace wind.
That'll go over and get out of it.
And you get something to a habit, don't you?
Well, habits, some bad habits that pigeons form, they're very difficult to shake off.
One time last year, I flew mine over a lot of way for weeds. I mean, so we get winds, I don't know. Yeah, we get winds somewhere out for weeds. And when the winds finished, you know, and it was beautiful, but they were still flying, they were windy, now raking back, all down, raking back.
Are you going to do in the snake?
Yeah, but they lost it after a week or two.
That's a big disaster.
They lost it after a week or two.
If you keep pigeons in and only fly them in the right sort of
Yeah.
weather, you won't they won't be fit.
So this is it.
That's why I was saying earlier on, if you can find a country where you've got the ideal flying conditions for rollers, that's the point you'll go.
But I always find that the wind closes down towards the evening. And in the morning, if it's windy, I wouldn't lose flying at. I'll wait until later on, when the wind has gone down a bit, and then I'll watch. If it's windy in the morning, I'll not find the pigeons.
Can I, I've got to go in a minute, but before I do, can I bring you back to breeding?
Yeah.
What are your views on polygamous mating?
Can I just interrupt you? Bill and Bob just got a chance to answer. I asked them a question. What would they do if they needed to bring it back on spawn? I'd like to tell you what I would do.
Yeah.
If I'm flying in competition on a Sunday, I fly my pigeons on the Friday. I always rest them the day before, so the last time out is the Friday. If my pigeons fly for more than 3/4 of an hour on the Friday, when I get them in, I give them a dose of salts. Give them a teaspoon of Epsom salts in a pint of water on the Friday, and then the rest of it on the Saturday.
Teaspoon.
A teaspoon of Epsom salts in a pint of water, or Glover salts. And the other thing that I do occasionally, but not too often, I'll give them Nemiside on the, instead of giving them Epsom salts on the Friday, I will give them a strong dose of wormer from the vet, which is Nemiside, is that a trade name?
Levamisol.
Levamisol. I think that's a trade name. I'll give them that, and I'll give them 5 ml in a pint of water, and I think the recommended dosage is about 2 ml. And I've had good results by giving the pigeons a wormer, overdose them with a wormer on the Friday, provided it's flown for about 3/4 of an hour to an hour on the Friday, on the last time out. If they only fly for half an hour on the last time out, then that's it.
Right then, gentlemen.
I'll just jump on that.
I've just asked, John, what the panel's views are on polygamous mating.
On what, matey?
Polygamous mating.
We didn't make that say word. What are you talking about? I'll tell you now. That's you're talking about close breeding.
No, mating one cock to
So
several hens.
I've never tried it.
No.
Personally, I've never tried it. I've just put another shed up, but I might try it in time. I might have a go at it. I think it will be. The thing is, if you pick your best cock out of your lot, you've only always, as I said earlier, you've only got one best cock. You've never got 2 that are as good. So if you took your champion cock, you should actually pair him to your 3 best hens or your 4 best hens. Sooner than pair those good hens to mediocre cocks, after, which really, if you take your champion cock, if you've got a champion, then the ones further down the line are getting less and less good roller sort of thing. So it would be a good idea to pair into 3 hens and run the eggs off them, wouldn't it? It would be a good idea. It's just a matter of having the room to do it and the time to do it. But it's a good idea.
You must always use your best pigeons. But it is much better if you've got an outstanding cock that's a champion in the air. Much better because you can mate him more conveniently with 3, 4 or 5 hens. Whereas with an outstanding hen, you're rather limited because you're looking from an egg laying point of view. And if you've got an outstanding cock, then find your 3, 4 or your best hens are made in turn to the outstanding cock and foster the eggs.
Well, Graham specialised in this system we're talking about now 5 or 6 years ago, where you had one cock running with 7 hens or something like that.
Yeah, 6 hens, 2 cocks in the same pen.
Yeah,
In 1978.
that's
And I
right.
got some fabulous results from that.
You had some very good results.
It consolidated the family very well.
You get your family all tied up very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had success.
They were 2 full brothers to 6 different hens that were half cousins and cousins.
Yeah.
But from experience, you'd look to see which hens produce the best performance mated to those particular cocks.
Oh yes.
You would find that certain hens wouldn't breed such good youngsters with the cocks as others.
Absolutely.
You eliminate the pigeons that bred the inferior pigeon.
Yes, definitely. There's no point doing polygamous
That's
matings
right. So
with pigeons that are
point of view,
inferior.
it was satisfactory.
Yes, very much so.
I think the thing about that is when Graham's running, I know lots of the lads in Middlesbrough do it as well. They'll run one cock with 3 hens. Normally, when Bill pairs up and I pair up with Bob, I know we pair up and we probably keep the birds locked up until they've laid the first round of eggs. But after that, the boxes are left open. I know they are at Bob's, I know they're not Bill's, so I've got enough time, but they certainly are at my place. So when Bob was saying earlier on about writing a pedigree actually isn't with the paper it's written on, unless the birds are kept boxed up all the time.
Yeah.
And when you're doing it the way you do it, Graham, you can be sure of the parentage.
Absolutely.
Bob, Bill and myself can't be. All we can say is we've got a close family of pigeons anyway, so it don't matter if a different cock has a different hen. But I watch my pigeons a lot, and I don't breed off yearlings as a rule. Occasionally I might breed off one yearling. This year there's no yearlings paired up in my loft, but last year there was perhaps one. And you'll notice especially with the yearlings, a yearling hen will squat for any cock. And if you spend time in your loft, you'll see this cock, this hen, and there should be probably 2 or 3 different cocks. Now that same fella can be writing with his pedigrees out. They're not worth the paper they're written on.
Correct.
Without you keep your birds boxed up all the time.
Single pen mated.
Single pens, but I mean to have I'd like to have single pens, but for me to come home from work and go down and feed all them different single pens, I mean, I'd be a rifle, I couldn't do that at all.
Do you need 3 separate nest boxes if you're only one cock with 3 hens? Will each hen go to?
We have 3 different nests.
Well, I don't know, Graham will tell you better. I'd imagine you put the cock in with the hen for so many hours and then put it with the mother hen for so many hours.
Well, in actual fact, the experiment that I conducted that one year, I just had 2 big pens and put 3 nest balls in, 3 hens and 1 cock, and that worked okay. But I've tried it since.
That worked.
It worked.
The cock's actually got to drive the end to the nest, because that can drive 3 at once. I mean,
it worked twice. I mean, for 2 different cocks, they were full brothers. And I've tried it since then, and I've had more difficulty with it. But if anybody really wants to know how to do that, you know, although I don't like all his book, David Kowalski does explain it very, very well in his book. He does actually put 2 or 3 different systems together, which are very useful for the novice to have a look at.
well, I ain't seen his kit, but when I see his kit fly, the next time we all see his kit fly.
Whether his kit's any good or not, George, is breeding, the way he explains how to do that, polygamous mating, is very good, and it's very well described.
But you know, you were saying, George, about cocks got to drive the hen to nest. You know, in individual nest boxes, cocks don't drive the hens at all. They're only enough to drive the hen. Very little.
In individual nest boxes.
Yeah, they're not even off to drive. They get lazy actually. And you have a tendency to get more and felt their legs, I think, for the same purpose. The cock's got no drive at all, like he can just like sit there.
For Ron Anderson, line problem this year.
Oh, you're welcome, mate.
Well, I found on this system. I found that on this system that I've got now, single pen mating, that if I let a pen up, I let a pair fly about inside so that the other birds can see it, then this starts to go on drive mating. So, in actual fact, that if you leave a spare cock, you know, just flying about inside, you'll find that you get more drive mating.
Do you fasten the cock up with each end, do you?
Yes, I do, yes.
I think you get more treading like with their arm together because it's competition, isn't it? It's competition. If you have your poultry, and this is a known fact, this like, if you have one cock running with 12 hens, you can have more than 30 legs, you do 3 cocks running with 45 hens.
Yeah.
Because the chance of that.
Oh, yeah, you
The
get
same as a bloke going to doors now, isn't it? You know, those kids go there, you don't really work at it.
That's practicing the safe method.
You know, I mean, but it's what I found all that time, I'm not more than 30 legs.
Well, gentlemen, I'm sorry to have to do this, but I'm going to break this meeting up now. Yes.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah. It would say if you like. I mean, well, I've got a promise on.
Here we go.
One day they'll kill him.
You won't make a promise, we'll talk pigeons.
I think that we're going to break this meeting up now. So thank you very much.
Well, John, on behalf of the meeting, I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Huntington, for chairing it and for asking some good questions and fielding some questions. And if you'd like to thank the panel, John, for me. Oh.
Yes, I'm doing that. I'm just saying that, gentlemen. I'd like to thank you very much for coming up here and enlightening us a little further on our favourite dog with the Roller Pigeon. I'd like to say on behalf of all of them, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Bob Brown.